Hi, so this week I wanted to add an additional video that just showed the blocking in of an image. And here's the thing to remember, that sure you can just block in the shapes, but it's the design, the structure, the composition that is actually holding all these shapes together. So you can block them in very simply if you've got a good structure underneath it. So I'll show you the block in, and then I'll show you some of the areas where I articulate the things a little bit more, so you get a sense of how the whole painting unfolded. I'm not sure I'm going to be able to keep a running commentary going here for the first, for the full 15-20 minutes, but I really wanted you just to see that I'm painting shapes one after another. They've been laid out, obviously, and where I'm painting around these yellow ochre spaces, but that green I just put in was a little bit more green than the almost black that I'm using here for that real dark background there. And I'm pretty careful about how I go around the figure. You'll see that right there around the hat and the shoulders and the flowers is really the most important part. And towards the end, you'll see that I actually spend quite a bit of time on that, even in the block in. You'll see that green's a little different, a little bit of phthalo in it, so it's different than the hedge. But there's nothing fancy about the actual blocking in. I mean, you have to find the right color. I'm painting all the shadows in, not necessarily low intensity, but sort of keeping all those value masses, thinking about them in terms of the shadows all together. And then if you get them all in, you'll see as it sort of comes together, then all the whites kind of play the role of the sunshine. And then by adding the color temperature, you pop it, because obviously if you're putting a color in, it goes darker than the white canvas. So you lose some of that beautiful contrast of the light hitting it. But by using color temperature, then you start to pull back and reestablish that beautiful contrast of the sense of light. There, I think I just put in this because that other one just seems a little bit too sort of relentless in its color. And I sort of softened it a little bit just there. I like that color, I think, better than the one I'd had before, and put that in. And now I'm taking that color and sort of brushing it into the two forms in order to kind of soften the bottom edge. And there's the building up there, which I'll sort of put more information into later. But you see, I'm sort of playing one shape into another. It's like there I'm sort of getting the the building shape and the tree shape. I'm kind of fashioning them one against the other. It's not that I'm just drawing up to the edge of the yellow ochre one. The yellow ochre is really giving me the masses of the major shapes and where to paint them. And then this is a shadow color of the gravel back there, and then there's a couple of hits of sunlight that hit it. And then this whole section, you'll see, I just block it in here very loosely. But this section here is an area that actually I had some trouble with, because I put in this dark color, and then I put in some lights, and I left some sky holes, and I want us to come down to the figure, and it was just getting too busy. So you'll see after the block in, actually towards the end of the whole video, how I've just been working on it even more, and then I'll just point out at the end even the changes I made from the end to the actual finished painting, where I kind of crafted it a little bit more. Because by putting the lit side, the dark side, and the sky holes in it, it just became too busy for a place I didn't really particularly want us to look. But you can just see that I just have maybe 3 or 4 values of green, warm and cool, and I'm just softening edges and pushing shapes into, and then here, just pushing those shapes. I don't want it to get too complicated, but I want it to look like something too. I want to structure some form. And, you can be softening edges and things, before you know it, you don't have any form. But at a certain point, I put in the sky holes, and then I'm getting this sense, I see there's sky back there. But then it gets a little busy. That's where I'm actually starting to look. So, I leave it for now. Don't worry about it. but it's definitely going to take work. And then I did feel, even though I really liked that dark, that I needed to get a little bit of color into that big shape. I think I mentioned that in the video. But you'll see that right there, I've lightened it right around the head, and later on I go back and darken it, because the contrast around the hat against that black is really what's going to cement us in. These are three, you can only see one really, but these are three sort of sailcloths we've got over that area at the back. It's a little room we created at the back of our garden with a little L-shaped couch or whatever you call it. It's California, you can stay out there. It's beautiful, little quiet spot surrounded by green. But you know, I mean, some parts, this angle, for instance, this sort of sweep, it's got to be pretty accurate, otherwise it's going to look funny. So you can see I'm taking attention. There's places even in the block-in you've got to be careful. But then you come to a big shape like this, you'll see that this has a bunch of slats on it, and later on I paint those slats in. But first off, it's just a big shape. That's the big thing it's doing. The slats are sort of secondary to it. And you know, you can see how intense, and big value shift here, but you can see how intense the temperature shift is. There's a warm yellow-green against the blue-green. I'm really exaggerating it. And you can see the gradation I'm creating down in the bottom left to push us up. You know, I do more of that as the painting goes on. You can see how different this green is to the grass green. I mean, the one below has way more yellow in it. This one would have a little bit. That one probably has cad yellow lemon, and the one in the grass probably has cad yellow medium. And this is lavender, that sort of gray color. It's quite a different green than the lemon tree. And then I'm getting the shadow side underneath of that to sort of get the sense of shadow at the bottom, structure and light hitting the top. And, you know, there I'm just starting to get some darks into the lemon tree. So here I just start with this big, well, actually, no, I don't. That's the shadow. Now, what's interesting later, see, this is the other side of the hedge, and later you'll see I kind of craft it and form it so that we start to see, oh, I see, that same thing is continuing on the other side. You know, just a pale, sort of dull blue for the dress. But there's just a single line for the sunlight hitting the edge of that thing, which is too wide, and I have to narrow it later. But now I'm starting to get the sunlight hitting that tree, and the lemon tree. And you'll see in just a moment, I'll put a few more marks in there. Hardly anything, really, in terms of detail, just a few shapes. And if you just sort of look at it, you realize, oh yeah, the sun's coming over the top of the studio on the left and just hitting the tops of the tree. And you realize already that's exactly what it looks like. And it's just a few simple shapes. And then there's the warm color, sort of a ochre color to the blue-purple of the shadow, and that's the gravel that's back there in that little room. I like the way landscape architects, that's a beautiful, rich shadow color. It's quite dark, but a lot of intensity, well, reasonable amount of intensity. But I like the way landscape architects talk about rooms in a garden, these sort of spaces. And then you look here that all the flesh, you know, the legs, the feet, the hands, the face, all just one value, although I do go in and make it a little darker. And then you see how cool the hat color is, like the dress. And then how light, and it's just a little bit of yellow in there. And then I'd have to fill in the holes there for the little bits that I missed with the bigger brush. Make sure we got the legs looking like legs. And, you know, right in here, because this is where I want you to look, I have quite a small brush and I'm really starting to carve back into the bigger shapes. I wouldn't call the detail, just the specific shapes I need for this to be. And so I'm putting a dark in behind her there to pop that edge. And little darks under the feet, sort of the shadow under the feet, so she kind of sits on the ground a little bit better. And then I think I mess with the hat for a bit because the hat's too big, too tall or something. You see there's a little bit of form in the dress, but not much. A little bit just around there, but then here you see I'm getting the lit side. And then I realize on top of the hat, bang, mark for the lit side of the hat. And then I'm sort of trying to carve the shapes again, but then I realize, oh, the hat's like a top hat. It's way too tall. But you see how dark I'm making it. There, I cut the hat down. But you see how dark I've gone back into that green, which I had structured to kind of lighten that big dark shape up. But I've actually gone back in with the darks. And then I'm making all the flesh a little darker. It's a little too light. But I'm going back in with the darks around her just to really pop the figure, because that's where I want you to look. So then there's a little bit of light on the flowers, and then we have the finished block in. And, you know, already we can see everything that's going to be there. The values are about right, the colors are about right. There's no detail, but every single shape is blocked in. We know exactly what's going to happen. And some painters, you know, somebody like Fairfield Porter, he's worth looking at, actually. Somebody like Fairfield Porter, he's finished. He moves on to the next painting. But I didn't. I thought I would just keep working here. And that color up there I just thought was kind of too dark, and I needed to sort of get a color that's a bit more interesting there and extend it beyond. I didn't want it to line up too much with the fence with the slats in it. And then this, as I say, this section here, you know, you say, oh, I make it look so easy. But this section here, I was really having to work with creating structure, but not getting it busy. So I sort of left it for now. And you can see I'm getting really dark there around the hat to make sure that that's where we're going to look. The real contrast is. And I'm starting to get some more sunlight coming around because it's hitting there like directly. The sunlight's up there. And then I'm pulling the thing over so it overlaps the red building better, or that purple building better, so it doesn't sort of line up and we're not sure where things are. By overlapping, we've clearly brought it now in front of that other building. And I start to soften the edges, and I'm going to start getting rid of those, or adjusting the sky holes so they don't hold so much attention because they're pretty light. And then I'm putting in, because this is a building, and with perspective and bits and pieces, I have to actually go in there. So I make careful consideration of where that line is coming down to and where the shapes are relative to the, see there's the building down at the bottom, so I'm sort of treating the building, but it's quite darker. Then I've got a maul stick again, just to put a little bit of, you know, the joists or whatever they are, just along there, because those things have to be fairly exact if I'm going to put them in at all. They can't be sort of one this distance and one. And then there's a little bit of shadow under each one, so that we kind of see it. Not too much. I mean, it'd be very easy to overdo that. And then look at this, because now I'm defining really clearly, see that where that line of the bushes go, and all of a sudden that bush, oh, I see what that bush is. It's a continuation, a gap, a little, you know, door into that room. And then I've carved the shape back into the lavender, so that that whole thing kind of makes more sense. Now I've gone to the other photograph so you can see, because I'm now delineating all that stuff that we're going to call the leaves. I don't change the shape. I add a color as it turns so that it's not quite so dark, not quite so warm. So there's a color there. Then I'm going and I'm just carving the edge where the light actually hits, and a few little spots down into, see that none of the spots in the shadow shape get light enough to ever be confused with the lit side, and then really establish a good strong dark underneath, so we're really clear that there's no light getting in there. And just softening that edge as it sort of draw it up into the... And you see, so much of this is drawing, right? You're just drawing with a brush. Just getting things to look right with a brush. So even though I've articulated much more information on that hedge, you can still see it is just a lit shape and a dark shape, and I've adjusted the edges. And there I'm sort of tying in that dark underneath so that that hedge automatically continues. Now you'll see me working on this, and you just saw it in the other video, working that flat value that I've got for the lemon tree. Now I'm starting to put some darks in there. You see there's quite a bit of contrast in that lemon tree. And you can see the lemons themselves. For a guy that grew up in Ontario, a lemon tree in your backyard is a miracle. So I wanted to get the lemons in, but they couldn't be too bright. Otherwise, you know, they look like the sun was hitting it way down, obviously in the shadow. So you can see I'm just working the ideas of where the darks are and leaving where the lights are. And then I find a color that's a little lighter, and I start building up the lights with the shapes. You know, they're all working off that ground color. There won't be a lot of ground color left by the time I'm done, but I'm using it so I don't have to keep fiddling with filling in little white spaces. But you see, now I'm sort of drawing in here the darks and reestablishing where the bottom of the tree actually exists. And you just see, it's like I go in there dark, I'm carving back into it and starting to get the leaves to pop, and I'll get in there with some dark things that are even darker. That's the building now. It's sort of quite dark down, and there's no light getting on it. And there's the thing that goes around the bed. I don't think I got the perspective right. Now I got it. And then here's where I'm working just with thin little lines for those little wisps of the lavender. See there, I've got a thin brush, just dragging a few, just on top of the ground color. Ground color you can still see. Just a couple of darks, few lights, and there I'm going for a few more lights in those things. You say, oh, I make it look so easy. I'm having to go back and forth, pulling this together. Now I'm going in with some that are really quite a bit darker. I didn't want to commit too quickly to those darks because it'll be in the middle of a medium dark that I'll put an even darker piece, and it'll start to get the sense of several values that'll articulate all that stuff. But you'll see I'm just pushing the darks, and then I pull the lights. Push the darks, pull the lights, and the thing starts to sort of structure as a tree. I mean, is every single one of those marks necessary? I don't know. That's how many it took me to do it. I mean, sometimes I might make it simpler, but here I'm softening the bottom edge of the lit, because it, just as it gradates down into it, and still darkening even more to get some of these darks in. Make sure there's good sense of shadow down at the bottom. But there you see I've put some more of the leaves in. And here are the lemons. And the lemons you have to be really careful, because they're light, they're as light as the sunlit thing, but they have to be a cool yellow. I was determined to get those in. And then here you just see I'm putting in a few marks, not very many, that establish the sense of, there's leaves, individual leaves that are catching a little bit of light. But you see now, you get quite a sense of volume of light hitting the sunlit part. And I'm softening some of those edges so that they don't jump too much, because I don't want you to look up there. I want you to look at the figure. But you're still getting this nice sense of the sunlight coming around there, and then down in the shadow side of the tree, all these lights and darks. But everything in the darks are cool greens, and everything up there in the sunshine is lit green. Now there's sort of a face I've created there with a face and two eyes. which I didn't notice when I painted it, but I got rid of at the end. You know how faces appear out of nowhere sometimes. But you know, you'd say I make it look so easy. Sometimes there's a lot of little marks that go into making this thing. And this here, I still feel that those sky holes are too busy. There's too much stuff going on up there. And you'll see, in just a moment, you'll see the finished painting. And just take a moment to look at it just before I finish here, and then what I do, because I just bring some little tiny marks that just sort of indicate a few branches in sunlight that just kind of articulates that space, because it looks too simple now compared to the rest of the painting, right? So I just put a few simple marks there, you'll see in the finished painting, that just articulate that. And just sort of softening that edge. But basically, there's the finished painting. And, well, here actually is the finished painting. And you see what I mean, just a few marks up in that top bush doesn't make it too busy, but allows us to sort of see a complete thing as much as everything else. And of course, I've put in the slats too, just drag them one after the other like that. So as always, I hope you found that helpful. I will see you next Tuesday. Bye for now.